At 13:47 hours, 7 Ukrainian UJ-26 Beaver drones approached Korsak Airfield from the northwest. Their targets were Russia's light aircraft fitted with door-mounted machine guns to hunt Ukrainian reconnaissance drones. The mission went smoothly so far, until they reached Tokmak. Here, a Buck M3 operator had been staring at empty sky for 6 hours when his screen erupted with contacts. 7 traces materialized at 42 kilometers, scattered across 2 kilometers of airspace. No formation, just identical returns crawling southeast at 180 kilometers per hour. His hand froze over the engagement switch. Something was off. Every drone kept merging and becoming individuals on his scope. That's because the composite construction of these drones absorbed radar energy rather than deflecting it. Carbon fiber and plastic are invisible compared to aluminum aircraft. At 42 kilometers, the returns flickered at the edge of detection, sometimes disappearing entirely between radar sweeps. But 2 drones in the lead began climbing to 2,500 meters. Their autopilots weren't responding to threats. This was scripted behavior, triggered at exactly 35 kilometers from the target. Another started broadcasting on 915 megahertz, mimicking reconnaissance downlinks, which are short digital bursts that real ISR drones transmit when sending compressed imagery or telemetry back to command posts. SAM operators trained for years to prioritize emitting targets. Any transmission meant command nodes or reconnaissance platforms. The Ukrainians had weaponized this training, using fake signals to draw missiles toward decoys while silent attack drones slipped through. The operator ran the numbers while the drones closed. 7 targets, 6 missiles ready, 12 minutes to reload if he fired everything. Standard doctrine demanded engaging obvious threats first, preserving ammunition for follow-up waves. Fire sequentially, and the first explosion warns the rest. Fire simultaneously and risk multiple missiles chasing the same target. The climbing drones crossed 35 kilometers, their return strengthening with altitude. He selected 3, the 2 climbers and the emitter, and fired. The launcher shrieked as it pivoted northwest. 3 9M317M missiles erupted simultaneously, accelerating through Mach 4 while climbing to 8,000 meters. At that altitude, high density drops to half of sea level. The same rocket motor that pushes a missile 25 kilometers through thick air can reach 42 kilometers through the thinner air above. Time to impact, 42 seconds. His fingers drum the console. 40, 30, 20. First detonation at 13:48 hours. The proximity fuse had triggered at 4 meters distance, optimal for the warhead's fragmented pattern. The 9M317M itself is a 5.5 meter, 580 kilogram missile with a 62 kilogram fragmentation warhead built around preformed tungsten cubes embedded in a high-density explosive matrix. When the proximity fuse fires, the explosive drives the cubes outward in a controlled expanding cone. Instead of random shrapnel, every cube fires along a predictable vector, concentrating damage along the missile's line of sight and maximizing probability of cutting control surfaces, fuel lines, and structural spars. The lead climbing drone was down. 8 seconds later, the emitter drone disintegrated. Perfect intercepts. However, these drones carried extra fuel, not warheads. The operator couldn't have known. Every behavior matched real reconnaissance drones exactly. The Ukrainians had studied which drones Russia shot first and programmed their decoys to act that way. The third missile tracked toward the second climber when 3 other drones suddenly bunched together. Flying within 50 meters created overlapping radar returns that merged into one fat target. The missile seeker saw the strongest return, the empty space where all 3 signatures combined. It detonated between them, rattling but not destroying anything. The 5 remaining drones immediately began scattering wide. This wasn't an autonomous adaptation, just the next line in their program script. Ukrainian mission planners had calculated when missiles would impact based on previous strikes and coded evasive maneuvers to trigger afterward. The Russian operator grabbed the encrypted phone. The handoff to the southern battery should have been automatic. The data link updated every 2 seconds, sharing track data across the network. But correlation required human confirmation. Was his track 247 the same as the other battery's track 091? By the time operators compared velocities and assigned new numbers, 30 seconds had passed. In those 30 seconds, drones could dive below coverage or change course entirely. The southern battery would inherit this mess, but rigid engagement zones meant poor coordination. These zones aren't arbitrary. They're carved up by the strengths and weaknesses of each system. The Buck's radar, missile kinematics, and seeker design make it most effective inside 40 kilometers where targets are maneuvering and low-altitude clutter is highest. The S-300, by contrast, was engineered for high-altitude, high-speed threats at long range, so its engagement envelope begins where the Buck's tapers off at 40 kilometers and extends to 200 kilometers. Each layer is supposed to hand targets smoothly to the next. But in fast engagements, the seams between these envelopes become friction points. The Southern Buck battery had watched everything. 2 drones destroyed, 5 survivors spreading across 3 kilometers of sky. The operator faced an impossible choice: engage everything and sit defenseless for 12 minutes during a reload, or select specific targets and risk letting armed drones through. His screen showed them descending through 1,000 meters, and doctrine left no time for debate. He brought both illumination channels online. The illuminator you see here works like a searchlight in a prison yard. It could only paint one spot at a time. To track multiple targets, it time-shared, switching the radar beam between drones every 500 milliseconds. First drone gets painted, missile receives update, beam switches. Second drone painted, second missile updated, beam switches back. But each switch meant half a second where missiles flew blind on predicted trajectory. Against maneuvering drones, those blind moments accumulated into an error big enough to miss. The Buck could guide 2 missiles per eliminator, 4 total against 5 targets. Someone would get through. The outer drones threatened to split around the airfield, one north, one south, dividing whatever defenses remained. He selected these flanking threats plus the center drone, launching 3 missiles in rapid succession. The eastern drone began wild maneuvers, climbing 200 meters, diving 300, never steady for more than 5 seconds. These weren't reactions to the missile. At present distances from the target, the autopilot executed programmed evasions. Sometimes they guessed right about when the missiles would come, and today they did. During each beam switch, the maneuvering drone could move 25 meters. The fire control computer predicted straight-line motion during these gaps. By the time the beam returned, the drone was 25 meters from where the computer expected, forcing constant correction. These corrections degraded the missile's trajectory, wasting fuel on course adjustments. The western drone descended steadily toward 500 meters where ground clutter would contaminate returns. The center drone dove hard, vanishing below the radar horizon at 200 meters. The operator watched it disappear, trusting the S-300 battery behind him would handle it. The western missile found its mark, another decoy eliminated in a ball of fuel and aluminum. The eastern missile struggled with the maneuvering target, its seeker hunting empty air where predictions said the drone should be. Close detonation, but no destruction. 4 UJ-26s survived, all carrying warheads, all below 500 meters, all now just 60 kilometers from Corsic. But getting past the Buck was the easy part. Now came the hard part. The S-300 operator had monitored everything for 12 minutes, his stomach knotting tighter with each failed intercept. His 6.4N6 Big Bird radar painted the entire battle space. Airliners heading to Istanbul, helicopters between bases, even migrating birds. But only 4 contacts mattered now, the drones that had survived 2 batteries and kept coming. The 2 flew at 800 meters following the M18 highway southeast. The others popped up intermittently when terrain forced them above 100 meters, ghost traces that flickered and vanished. The drones navigated by inertial dead reckoning corrected by optical landmarks. The navigation system did this by using edge detection algorithms to identify features. The sharp contrast where the M18's asphalt met dirt created a clear navigation line. The reservoir's dam formed a unique geometric pattern. When the camera matched these patterns against stored templates, the autopilot updated position. Accuracy within 10 meters with no emissions to detect. The operator selected a highway follower and initiated the engagement. His 4.8N6 missiles were built to vaporize B-52s at 200 kilometers, not chase lawnmowers at treetop height. This creates a critical flaw in his fire control computer. The computer's software problem was sampling rate versus update rate. The computer sampled target position every 100 milliseconds, but only updated the missile guidance every 500 milliseconds. For an 800 km/h cruise missile, that meant 111 meter position changes between samples. Manageable. But for a 180 km/h drone, only 5 meters change between samples. The algorithm interpreted this as sensor noise and filtered it all out, essentially making the drone invisible to proper tracking. The software expected an 800+ km/h cruise missile minimum. Feed it a 180 km/h drone and the algorithms broke down, like using a sniper scope to aim at your own boots. Still, the launcher elevated nearly vertical. This missile would execute a gravity turn, using Earth's pull to curve the trajectory, launch vertical to clear ground clutter and gain altitude quickly. As velocity built, gradually pitch over, trading vertical speed for horizontal distance. At 30 kilometers altitude, cut the motor and coast to apogee. The missile became a ballistic projectile, following a perfect parabola. At the peak, nose over and dive. Gravity accelerated it back to Mach 6 for the terminal phase. Beautiful physics that assumed the target would be where math predicted in 85 seconds. That's because the drone followed the highway since terrain dictated routes. Power lines ran southeast, railway ran south. These were the only corridors with radar masking. Both sides knew the paths. The game was timing, not surprise. But that didn't stop the weaknesses in weapon design. Once airborne, the command link only sent steering updates, not destruct commands. Russian designers assumed any target worth a 48N6 was worth destroying. No second thoughts, no recall. Even if the operator realized he'd targeted a friendly, the missile would complete its mission. The operator tracked both blips, missile climbing towards space, drone crawling along asphalt. 60 seconds to impact. The drone maintained course perfectly. Too perfectly. At 40 seconds, it banked hard east toward the reservoir. Another preset waypoint, not evasion. Ukrainian planners had calculated when the S-300 would engage based on distance and programmed the turn. The missile's computer commanded maximum deflection, but at Mach 6, you don't turn, you curve across kilometers. New intercept point 800 meters behind where the drone would actually be. The missile tried to chase, bending its trajectory like a fastball trying to curve after release. The seeker found empty air. Before he could process the miss, the second visible drone climbed to 2,000 meters and accelerated to maximum speed. A perfect target, begging for attention. The operator's finger hesitated over launch authorization. Too obvious. But orders were orders. He fired, knowing this felt wrong. Meanwhile, the drone that had dodged the first missile dove to 50 meters and found the high-tension power lines running southeast. 330,000 volts created an electromagnetic storm. Every radar pulse hitting steel towers and cables generated hundreds of false returns. The drone's weak signature vanished in this electrical chaos like a whisper in a thunderstorm. The climbing drone never wavered, maintaining its perfect target profile. Simple tactical math. Trade one drone worth $30,000 for a missile worth $2 million while buying time for your buddy to disappear. The climbing drone was bait, and it worked. The 48N6 found it easily, proximity fuse triggering at 6 meters. The drone soon became an expanding cloud of composite fragments. The operator swept his radar across the power lines, nothing but interference. To the north, 3 low flyers crested rises momentarily. He launched 2 missiles at predicted intercept points, firing blind where mathematics suggested they might be. Both found empty sky. The drones had turned immediately after dropping from sight. South, east, and south again. 4 missiles expended, 1 drone destroyed. 3 armed drones still inbound. He called Corsic directly. 3 contacts, low altitude, your sector in 6 minutes. All ammunition expended. The airfield sat 80 meters behind the lines, deep in what doctrine called the rear area. The layered SAM network should have stopped everything. That's why Corsic had only 1 soldier with 1 IGLA. Radio chatter told the story. Drones inbound, missiles missing, something about friendly fire. When the siren wailed at 13:55, he left his position and grabbed the Igla-S from the guard shack and scanned the horizon. The sound came first, not jet thunder or helicopter thump, but something like a lawnmower, distinct from any military aircraft. At 180 kilometers per hour, the Doppler shift was minimal. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. A black cross soon materialized through the morning haze. 3 meters out, 500 meters up, approaching at highway speed. The Igla-S Seeker hunted for heat, built in the 1970s to find jet engines burning at 800 degrees. The drone's engine ran at 300 degrees, barely warmer than sun-baked concrete. Its pusher prop mixed cold air with exhaust immediately, diffusing even that weak signature. The soldier fought to hold the sight steady. The 30-kilogram launcher grew heavier with each second. The Seeker tone stuttered in his earpiece. Lock, no lock, partial, searching. To the Igla's detector, expecting jets against cold sky, the entire world looked like one warm blur. Standing orders were clear: engage anything unidentified. Despite the marginal lock, the guard squeezed the trigger. The missile erupted from the tube, its backblast swirling dust across the checkpoint. The Seeker scanned its 40-degree cone, the field of view inside which its infrared sensor can actually detect a heat source, hunting for heat. Everything was warm: runway, buildings, vehicles. The drone flew too low, just another warm object among hundreds. The proximity fuse never detected the composite aircraft. The missile passed 15 meters below and self-destructed 8 seconds later in gray smoke. The guard lowered the empty launcher. 3 more dots appeared behind the first, spreading into multiple vectors. This forced defenders to divide attention. Even with more missiles, he could only engage one 90-degree sector at a time. Multiple angles meant choosing which to stop while others pressed through. The lead drone's optical system activated at 2 kilometers, its cameras sweeping parked aircraft. The Ukrainians knew exactly where to look. Russian pilots had posted telegram videos showing parking spots, revetment numbers, even daily schedules. Commercial satellites filled the gaps. Social media had become reconnaissance. The drone found a Yak-52 in a northern revetment, its radial engine unmistakable under camouflage netting. The autopilot calculated just 15 degrees right, hold altitude 1,800 meters, dive at 60 degrees. The dive began at 13:56. The drone rolled inverted, pulled through, and accelerating under gravity. The warhead design was primitive but effective. 20 kilograms of TNT-based explosive surrounded by a tungsten fragmentation sleeve. No shaped charge for penetration, just raw blast effect. The fragments would scatter in a 50-meter radius, each one potentially lethal. But the real destroyer was overpressure, the blast wave that would crush aluminum structures like empty cans. The warhead armed at 200 meters, impact fuse, backup timer, tungsten fragments around TNT explosive. 60 meters per second at impact, punching through aluminum like tissue. The warhead detonated inside the fuel tank. Aviation fuel doesn't explode cinematically. It deflagrates, burning subsonic but generating massive overpressure. The tank split, spraying 120 liters of burning fuel across the revetment. The fireball consumed the Yak-52 in fractions of a second. The second drone had orbited 5 kilometers north, waiting, its camera locked into a Cessna's high-wing profile against the flames. Same calculation. Adjust heading, hold altitude, maximum angled dive from 1,000 meters. Impact at 13:57. The warhead struck the port wing root, detonating inside the fuel tank. The wings separated. The fuselage flipped. Burning fuel spread across the runway. The strategic effect exceeded the tactical damage. These aircraft were the only effective counter to Ukrainian reconnaissance drones. Without them, Ukrainian ISR could operate freely, spotting for HIMARS strikes. 2 of them destroyed meant dozens of future reconnaissance missions would succeed. Bye for now.